Welcome to the beat. We have a lot to cover tonight. The crisis engulfing the CDC, dangers to public health, and a new example of how officials who are potentially fake fired are pushing back. And outrage as ICE agents were seen detaining firefighters as they try to fight fires to protect the public. And then more Republican lawmakers facing the buzzsaw at voter town halls.
Are you gonna say that?
Thank you.
There's no question in power.
The pushback to Donald Trump's power grabs is hitting both him, his administration, and these other Republicans who, according to voters in their own districts, often red-leaning districts, say enough is enough. Lisa Cook is the Fed governor that Trump posted on social media he is firing, which is a classic example in Trump's increasingly autocratic efforts to see what he can get away with. A, that's not a legal way to typically fire someone, but B, and more importantly, the Fed officials are not part of a Trump cabinet or people who he picks that way. He does nominate them, they're Senate confirmed, but then unlike, say, the cabinet, we know since the beginning of the Fed, no president has ever removed a Fed official for no reason. And Ms. Cook is punching back today, filing a lawsuit against Trump over this unprecedented and illegal removal, as her lawyers put it. And this could be a landmark legal battle because the Federal Reserve is not just some other little part of the government as far as Trump or Musk is concerned, as they've tested going after parts of the government that, whether it's good policy or not, judges said, yep, well, you can fire certain employees. This is different. The Federal Reserve was always insulated from exactly this kind of partisan pressure to protect its independence in the American economy. And even if it sounds like a kind of obtuse thing and you don't wake up thinking about the Federal Reserve every day, most people don't, that's a good thing because most days in most parties' administrations, there haven't been these kind of efforts to turn it partisan. That is a backdrop for the increasing concern and pushback around the country. California Governor Gavin Newsom has become one of the loudest Democratic voices in saying you can't just wait around and criticize. You have to fight fire with fire. And he is talking directly about something that used to be considered sort of a more fringe concern, or is it really going to happen? Well, he says it's happened here and Trump wants it to happen again, how he will cling to power.
He will send the National Guard. He will send them all across this country, and he will do so through Election Day. And he'll do so working in concert, as he has with ICE and Border Patrol, to do the same. You have the largest private police force in the world. If people actually think this guy's serious about having another election? You think he's joking about 2028? Wake up. You will lose your country.
A stark warning from a governor who has used his powers, both going to court and fighting with Trump, and also said he's going to continue to break decorum or anything else he has to in recounting, for example, what are typically private discussions in the White House between him and the president, who he said was very exercised about continuing to abuse power. Now, for all the talk about, well, Trump did win the election and all the reasons that Democrats may have lost by 1.5 points, this is an ongoing story, not just one snap review of where the country was in November. And the Democrats made their mistakes. I think that's been well established under the Biden era, and they had to swap out the candidate. But even after losing by 1.5 points, the country, the nation is watching this. And I want to remind you, with everything that Trump has done in this first year, where he stands. An approval rating that is now the lowest of his second term, one of the lowest of modern presidencies, sinking in this late August period of Trump clashes to just 37%. There's also a public health crisis unfolding and turmoil at the CDC, where the Trump administration, not through Trump directly initially, but through basically an intermediary, said they were going to oust their chosen CDC director because of a clash with RFK over vaccines. Now, she, like the board governor, is saying there are still rules and laws here, even if Trump wished otherwise. And because this was done through an unusual intermediary, she argues and states that is just not lawful. She does serve at the pleasure of the president, different than the Fed, but she says she's not going anywhere until the president steps in and says what he means. 4 other top officials are resigning in what looks like a very clear protest of how the Trump administration has dealt with both the science of this and the process. Now, one of the doctors wrote a letter on the way out accusing Trump officials of pushing policies and materials that do not reflect scientific reality and are designed to hurt rather than improve the public's health. Also stating that RFK Jr. has been intentionally eroding the trust in those, what she calls, quote, low-risk vaccines, and noting Trump officials' desire to please a political base will result in death and disability of vulnerable children and adults. CDC workers also held a rally outside the headquarters, along with some allies, in defense of what they view as a kind of rolling attack on both the science and the leadership of that organization. Now, RFK clearly has a blank check from Trump. So what he does is not just an RFK problem. The buck stops with the president. And as we showed you, voters seem to realize that, turning against this administration in this early period. He's also saying he's found interventions that he says may cause autism.
We'll have announcements as promised in September. We're finding interventions, certain interventions now that are clearly, almost certainly causing autism. And we're going to be able to address those in September.
RFK using that televised meeting there to obviously try to give a boost to this. Listen to what he says he can do about diagnosing children himself.
I'm looking at kids as I walk through the airports today, as I walk down the street, and I see these kids that are just overburdened with mitochondrial challenges, with inflammation. You can tell from their faces, from their body movements. I know that that's not how our children are supposed to look.
He can tell from their faces, from their body movements, he says. Very few doctors consider that any kind of diagnostic, but this is the state we're in. This is the leadership team that Donald Trump has selected. And this is, even as I've mentioned, a late summer period where people may not catch every little bit of news, but the news they are keeping up with, whether they get it through traditional media sources or an alert on their phones or even social media, which we've cautioned sometimes has a lot of false information, but whatever general picture people are getting, it is leading to this historically low approval for the president. A disapproval on policy, on substance, and clearly, as the No Kings protests also showed, a concern about whether Gavin Newsom and others are right, whether we are living through the slow building boil of a plan to end democracy in this country. And for all the hyperbolic exchanges, which do happen, by the way, from politicians sometimes in both corners, Donald Trump has basically spent the bulk of this first year of the term proving his critics right, showing that the autocratic warnings were not overstatement. Many of the things he's doing now sound like Democratic campaign ads from last year. He'll put Marines in the streets. He'll put troops in the streets. He'll undercut science. He'll put conspiracy theorists in charge of your children's health. With all that happening and voters revolting, where do we go next? We have a man who knows Donald Trump, who's tangled with him and is known to many of our viewers, longtime colleague, Reverend Al Sharpton, joins me for a special discussion when we're back in 90 seconds. Reverend Al Sharpton is here. We want to show him marching on Wall Street earlier today, protesting Donald Trump, the leadership, the pressure, intervention in the economic leadership of the country, and this ongoing clash over diversity in hiring. Rev, you've cautioned against that. We see you out in the streets, which both shows what you're doing and also full disclosure of where you stand on some of those debates with the president. But we've now seen Wall Street leaders who may have said, oh, fine, push back on DEI or BLM. Oh, fine. Okay. He wants to have a little more say about things. And now this week they're seeing he wants to go after central banking. He wants to control the economy in what some call a warped view of MAGA socialism. Other people call it extortion. What were you saying today? And do you think anyone on Wall Street is waking up?
I think that we are saying exactly that. And that is that when it was DEI, and just diversity, which implies minorities and women, Wall Street looked the other way. When they now see that he's taken 10% in Intel, I mean, this is supposed to be the conservatives that don't believe in government interference. He's going in, dealing with taking over policing in Washington, threatening to do it in Chicago and other places. What happened to the states' rights philosophy of the conservatives where national government doesn't come in? So they're beginning to see a different threat to themselves. And that's why the march today was important. Thousands of people, more than I thought would come, march down, because not only are we not getting the jobs or eliminating jobs, they're eliminating business contracts to blacks and women and Latinos. They're eliminating C-suites. And the people on Wall Street needed to see bodies in their lunch hour like that that'll say, we will buy a few shares of stock, come to your stockholders meetings with thousands of people. We're going to have this argument. And I think Donald Trump, having known and fought with him and was friendly with him and fought with him again for the last 40 years, he only respects people that will stand up to him. He does not respect people that cows to him.
Yeah, and we're seeing that sort of diversion in the country. A lot of people are standing up. There's a lot of opposition. I showed the polling. Governor Newsom says you got to take him seriously and fight it now. It's too late if you expect people to catch up with it later. And he's pointing to both Trump musing about a third term, musing about being a dictator, Steve Bannon, who's on the outs, who's not running things the way he used to, but it often is the kind of trial balloon for these things. Take a listen to Bannon.
The lead story over at Semaphore. Wait for it. Republican voters now 53-47 support President Trump running for a third term. I kid you not. Told you this day was coming.
Do you think Trump is serious about this and Newsom is right to say you got to get this out there and fight it now?
I think that he is serious as he is about anything else, but he becomes increasingly serious when there's no pushback and when people like Bannon, whether he's inside or outside the tent, make stuff popular. Trump is a person that goes with whatever serves his ego and purposes at the time. He's not a deep thinker. He doesn't think in 2025 about 28. But if it sounds right and he can build up and gear up a momentum, yes, he will do it. And look at what he's doing. He has, to be taking over cities, to say you want to remove a governor from the Federal Reserve on an accusation. We don't know that there's going to be an indictment. We don't know there's going to be a prosecution. We don't know if there's going to be a conviction. He wants to fire her based on an accusation. And here's a man with 34 felony convictions and was found guilty of fraud with how he did business. And no one's hitting back saying, wait a minute, you're the last person that ought to be talking about an accusation. You're a convict, the only one that ever sat in the Oval Office.
What do you think Trump returns to here as we come back next week? Congress comes back into session. The Epstein issue is not something they've been able to completely suppress. And whether Trump cares or not, the Republican Party can see polling. When you get down to, you're dropping towards what could be a third of the country. That's not where a party wants to be going into what is a midterm year.
I think that Trump will face people bringing back up the fact that we've not seen the entire Epstein matter. We have not seen an explanation on why Maxwell was moved to a minimum security federal facility. And we've not seen a lot of transparency there. So Epstein is not dead. And I think when they're going to look at these whole takeovers that he's trying to do with the National Guard, who are not trained to fight crime, who don't bear arms unless it's special, I think he's going to face a more divided Congress, even in some Republicans, than he faced on his way in.
Reverend Al Sharpton, thank you. I'll tell folks, reminder, Politics Nation airs weekends, 5 p.m. Eastern, where you can catch the Rev this weekend on these issues. The hot summer that Republicans didn't want continues with these constituent town halls. We also, by the end of the hour tonight, will be joined by Omar Epps, making his Beat debut, the great actor. But next, we have Joyce Vance on the Epstein scandal that won't go away. Donald Trump and his allies have been saying for some time that they hope to end the Epstein matter or release something and make it quiet down, and certainly by Labor Day. Well, it's not going according to their plan. Congress is returning to Capitol Hill. You got a bipartisan duo that wants to force a House vote requiring Trump's DOJ to release all the Epstein documents once and for all. Since for all the double talk, Trump's administration is clearly not doing that. The same duo says they will hold a press conference with Epstein survivors on the first day Congress returns from recess. I could tell you here in the newsroom, we hear about a lot of press conferences, and sometimes you look and say, this is important, maybe we'll cover it. Other times you look and you say, maybe it's a political gimmick. It always depends on the news of the day. You watch the news, so you probably know that. But it would be a good bet that a lot of people online and in the news media will be wanting to cover some version of that news conference, considering that Trump has open questions, he has not fulfilled his vows for transparency, and substantively, it matters when victims, some of whom have never appeared in this formulation together, speak out about what they say is the Trump administration's failures. So that is pressure. House Democrats also looked over this first batch of documents that were kind of pushed out here in the summer period from DOJ and say most of them are not new. They were basically already public. The DOJ did release something new, its unusual interview with the Epstein co-conspirator Maxwell, but that's raised a lot of questions amidst these blanket denials.
I never, ever saw any man doing something inappropriate with a woman of any age. And I did introduce him to women. I did, but not underage women. So I never saw an aggressive move. I never saw anything that was
Non-consensual.
Oh, well, thank you. Okay. I never saw anything that was non-consensual.
That's the voice of a sex trafficking convict disclaiming things she was already convicted of. It undercuts her credibility and speaks to the farce of that interview, according to many legal experts. We have one on hand, as you see, Joyce Vance, former U.S. attorney, MSNBC legal analyst. Welcome back. Joyce, the trickle or drip of some information or sometimes recycled information from DOJ seems to be raising more questions. They want to claim they're releasing stuff, but the big stuff they haven't released yet, and what they have released looks fairly stale. What does that tell you about sort of where they're at with a president who once claimed there would be transparency in this case?
Well, and that's exactly the issue here, Ari. DOJ was under no obligation to release its case files. But Donald Trump, the president, the head of the executive branch, their boss, said that there would be transparency. And so the fact that they've backtracked, I think, raises a lot of legitimate suspicions and concerns about what might be in that evidentiary file if it were released. So far, we've seen two dodges. We've seen this ridiculous end run, this attempt to get the courts to release grand jury material, which failed. And in the process of that, we learned that the only thing that was involved there was two summary witnesses testifying. So nothing new there. And then we have this release, this dump of information vouched for by Representative Comer, which turns out to be nothing new. And so at some point, you don't have to be a former federal prosecutor to have your little ears pick up and wonder what it is that they're trying to keep from the American people.
Mm-hmm. And jailhouse statements, be they issued in this unusual interview format, or what sometimes happens, as you know, in cases where there's things that are captured that an inmate says to another inmate or in a context, they don't have automatically high credibility. We're talking about convicts. Sometimes we're talking about people who are trying to barter or trade information or continue to clear their own name for whatever their own personal reasons. And so when Maxwell went on and on about how nothing bad ever happened, I played one part, I'm about to play you another. I'm wondering what it tells you about her credibility, because the administration wanted to release this to say, look, here's a character witness for Donald Trump, in a sense. And that's so bizarre because a convicted sex trafficker is a terrible character witness. Here she was. Take a listen.
I saw him with lots of masseuses. I never saw a single masseuse ever look unhappy or not come back or whatever. So based on my observation, I don't think that if you are being raped, as now he's like this prolific, I just can't imagine why you would.
It's not what you observed at the time.
Not at what I observed at the time, no.
So Blanche sort of gives her this open door, and she talks about how whatever the ring of activities, including these so-called masseuses, were happening, Epstein never did anything in her observation that caused anyone to be concerned. I'll let you have the easy job of analyzing and fact checking this. I'll just say it sounds ludicrous because we know these people were concerned because we have their testimony. Some of them are going to be speaking out next week. We know they were concerned after their interactions with the now deceased defendant Epstein.
It's really hard to imagine a less credible witness. The only thing that matters here isn't my assessment of Maxwell or your assessment. It's the jury's assessment. They heard all of the evidence. They heard her defense. They found her guilty. A unanimous jury of her peers convicted her. Look, she's sitting in federal prison. We all understand the game. Her case is still on appeal. She has hope, perhaps, that her conviction will be turned and she might be able to get her life back. It seems very unlikely to me, having studied the briefs, that she has anything there, but we understand what the game is. And I think your point here is so important. These victims who are willing to come forward, it's not easy. And it's especially difficult in the current context where someone like Donald Trump sits in the White House. And we now live in a world that treats women very differently than the world treated women even several years ago. So these victims are engaging in an act of bravery, trying to make sure that the truth is what shines through all of this. The fact that the Justice Department released this tape is really, as you say, just a ludicrous exercise. You hear Todd Blanche literally putting words in the witness's mouth. You hear him offering her up as a credible source. We all know that she isn't.
Yeah. Joyce Vance, thank you. Needed sober context on a story that continues. So thank you very much. Still ahead, we'll show you some of these outraged voters in Republican districts and Trump clashing with Democratic governors. But more Democratic governors are taking the page out of California or some of these states and fighting back hard. That includes Progressive Governor Bob Ferguson of Washington State, who is our special guest live next. The Trump administration continues to ramp up these deportation efforts, and in contrast to what was claimed as the primary reason during the campaign, there's no evidence here that they're prioritizing the dangerous criminals. You can see ICE detaining active firefighters here who were actually involved in working to contain a wildfire in Washington State. And if you remember what happened in California, these percentages are scary. That fire is only 13% contained, and yet these federal officials basically stopped two of the men from working towards that public safety goal, some of their colleagues sharing video of that raid online.
It's what they do, guys. This is what they do. This is their job.
Todo bien, hombres. Todo bien. Todo bien. Todo bien, hombres.
Trying to take our away from us right here.
There are, of course, all kinds of individuals who may not have proper or current legal status in all 50 states that do work. In fact, we have an economy that continues to use a lot of this type of labor. And labor that's involved in the public safety effort is generally far, far more important to allow to continue during the workday, at least, than, say, other random work. But this isn't being enforced with an eye on public safety or even equally across all 50 states. I can't show you something like this happening tonight in deep red states. It's happening, as the president admitted, as part of a political vendetta, using these powers against blue states as a type of retribution while sparing red states to continue a kind of autocratic messaging that, hey, if you were in the right place, on the right team, maybe it won't happen to you. Democratic governors are pushing back. Some have become a key check on using the constitutional powers of federalism to deal with Trump overreach. California's Gavin Newsom, Westmore in Maryland, who joined us last night, J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, and others. In Washington State, Governor Ferguson hit back at the Attorney General for threatening that state over its chosen immigration policies.
Washington State will not be bullied or intimidated by threats and legally baseless accusations. Pam Bondi seems to think and seeks to have Washington State bend the knee to a Trump administration that day by day drags us closer to authoritarianism. That's not going to happen either. I am not intimidated by Pam Bondi or the president.
That Governor Bob Ferguson joins us on the beat tonight. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
What do you view as the goal or purpose of that operation against the firefighters in your state, and what's your response?
Look, Ari, I think you nailed it at the outset when you said, look, Trump ran on this campaign of sending out of the country the worst of the worst. I'm not sure who's more the best of the best than someone who's working on a fire in a remote part of Washington State, our largest firefighter, and literally arresting them as they're doing that work as they come off the line. It's truly breathtaking, but just shows the degree and the depths to which this administration will go in trying to enforce these very cruel immigration policies.
Is there something you can do about it?
Well, obviously, the federal government has a lot of authority when it comes to enforcing federal immigration laws. Washington State, as you mentioned at the outset, we have a policy that precludes our local law enforcement from cooperating with raids at businesses or immigration enforcement like this. We don't engage in that. But there is a limitation for all states when it comes to trying to stop, even if they're stopping firefighters in a remote part of Washington State who are simply trying to keep our state safe. There are certainly limitations to that.
The border czar, as they call him, Tom Homan, has talked about this sanctuary city policy, which you just mentioned. We've had him on this program as well. Take a listen to what he says.
Operations are ramping up across the country, but you can see a ramp up of operations in Chicago, absolutely. You're going to see a ramp up of operations in New York. You're going to see a ramp up of operations continue in LA. And, Portland, Seattle. I mean, all these sanctuary cities that refuse to work with ICE.
Fact check true, as you just referred, there is a real policy clash here, and he's referencing that because of the difference over the enforcement priorities, et cetera, many of these so-called sanctuary cities don't work with ICE. What do you say to the Trump administration argument that if you and other cities work with them more, they wouldn't have to come in like this?
Oh, I mean, give me a break is what I would say to that. Look, my job as a governor is to make sure our limited law enforcement resources that we have go to making sure our community is safe and local law enforcement. It's not our job to do the job of the federal government when it comes to enforcing federal law and federal immigration laws. And certainly, given the character of the cruel way in which this administration is conducting these raids, showing up at a remote location. I've been mountain climbing out there, Ari. I've been backpacking. This is a remote part of our state. To go pick up 2 firefighters who are out there fighting the largest fire in Washington State in the hot weather. Look, it's breathtaking that this is what it's come to. So, our job is to focus on what we can do. Make sure we're doing everything we can to protect Washingtonians, enforce our law that we call the Keep Washington Working Act, which, by the way, Ari, I'll mention when it passed in 2019, passed in a bipartisan fashion in the Washington State Legislature. This is a bipartisan law because it makes sense. It's good for public safety and leaves us out of, this business of what the federal government is doing when it comes to enforcing their immigration policies and just such a, masked agents jumping out of unmarked cars, plucking people off the streets, picking up firefighters in remote locations. It's all, to me as an American, something I would never see as a U.S. citizen.
The president talks openly and repeatedly about staying in power past 28, or why dictators, he says, bring benefits. Take a look.
They say, we don't need him. Freedom, freedom. He's a dictator. He's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. So the line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator.
Do you take it seriously? How would you fight that? Would you oppose any effort by him to try to get on, say, your state's ballot again for an illegal third term?
Hell yeah. Heck yes, I take that seriously, Ari. Absolutely. Anyone who does not take him at his word when he speaks is a fool and has their head in the sand, full stop. So absolutely, I take that seriously. And look, we have some experience in dealing with this guy. In his first administration, I was proud that I was the first attorney general to challenge him in court and the first to beat him in court. We beat him in court 55 more times with other attorneys general across the country. So look, we'll have our battles in the court and the battle of public opinion, but every viewer watching this show, we all have agency in what's going on. We all need to be out in the streets in peaceful protest. We need to be out there and be active. Whatever your station in life is, whatever your role is, we all have agency in what's going on, and we all need to buckle up and prepare for the absolute worst. To do anything less is not doing our duties as Americans to defend our democracy.
Understood. And you know, it's a packed news day. When we have more time, as someone who grew up in Washington State, we can trade more hiking. You said you were out there hiking. You know, I've been out. I climbed Rainier with my dad. I did Cascades, Hoh Rainforest. So I got to get your favorite hike sometime, unless you have it right now, top of the head.
It's a deal, but I just came back from climbing Remmel Mountain with my son, one of the 100 highest in the state. So they're all beautiful out here in Washington State. Looking forward to coming back on better circumstances and talking about the beautiful state of Washington.
Better circumstances and clear air, a nice summer intention. Governor Ferguson, on all of this, thanks for joining tonight. I appreciate it. We're going to fit a quick break, but when we come back, why Republicans are getting booed at their town halls here late summer. I'm going to show you. Donald Trump's approval is plummeting to its lowest point in the second term, and that means independents, conservatives, and some Republicans turning on him, which we're seeing in these Republican districts where town halls are going left. An Ohio gathering erupting in loud boos as voters faced Republican Congressman Davidson.
They found loopholes to be able to add non-citizens, illegal aliens, into.
They're humans. I'm going to say it.
Almost everyone in the room, if you pay income taxes, would have had your taxes increased. Trump was doing a great job of securing our vote.
That's the sound of certain Republican talking points running into reality, what people actually think in Ohio, a state that Trump won. Republican leaders know it's this bad. Their argument is not, hey, stage a careful event or make sure you have the friendlies in the front. They're just saying it's too hard with what the voters actually think of the Trump agenda, so don't hold town halls at all. But voters can't always be silenced.
I would appreciate you taking your father's U.S. Constitution book, read it, study it, make your own lines underneath it, and get Trump out of office.
He continually lies and lies and lies.
You need to take your head out of Trump's and start doing your representation of us.
Tough talk from people who've had enough from the kind of Republican caving for everything Trump does. Now, we're going to fit in a break. Donald Trump's made a lot of claims about crime, but what's actually happening in America? We have more on that next. It's a family affair on the beat with two entertainers that you know and love, the Grammy-winning artist 2 Chainz and acclaimed actor Omar Epps. They are cousins. Now, Omar Epps has had a storied career from ER to House, as well as classic films like, of course, Juice and Love and Basketball.
But don't you ever pull a gun on me again in your life.
Well, I hope I won't have to.
Yeah, we all go down if you do, because we all crew.
You are possessed by the biblical demon Legion.
Nope, no jumping off a cliff in a herd of pigs.
Otherwise, it did fit. Graves' disease.
Nope, thyroid levels are normal.
You want us to spend the next few days shooting down every theory in the world? Or can we do our jobs?
1st to 10.
5.
Scared?
I have better things to do. I sent the labs in.
What good is sending the labs in if you don't check them?
They said they were going to take an hour.
And then we have last name Chainz, first name 2. The iconic 6'6" star known for personifying a vibe, embodying how cool it can be to be different, and showing us that, yes, everyone loves trap music. Everyone.
Who he's not I smoke strong, not pie. Louis V's in my archives. Black diamonds are part-time. When I die, bury me inside the jury style. When I die, bury me inside the jury style. I'm different, yeah, I'm different. Pull up to the scene with my ceiling missing. The money that I'm making, I don't see it like I'm blind. I'd rather spend money, baby, I don't spend time.
The cousins are working together on Red Clay, a short film. They're joint executive producers and writers. It just debuted at the Atlanta Film Festival. 2 Chainz and Omar Epps, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Great to see you guys.
Good to see you.
How do you feel working with your cousin? And tell us about the project.
Well, it's easy, It's a family affair, truly, and Red Clay it's my honor actually to be of assistance, and I like to say to help change, bring this vision to life. So
I love that. We have a little clip. Let's take a look at this.
Cool. Choices.
You gotta do what you gotta do to get some bread till I get back home.
You have 1 minute left.
We all got a choice. Where I'm from, $100 will make you feel like you're on top of the world. So you can be rich with ambition.
You think we ever gonna be rich and famous?
And broke.
2 Chainz, you're a storyteller. A lot of people listen to the stories you tell. What was important about this one?
Well, this was a lifelong project for me. It's a subject that I hadn't touched on in interviews. I hadn't touched on, directly into my music. It was me taking a creative risk, me trying to really, set myself free with some trauma that that a lot of us go through when we were young. And this was an artistic way to express it through this short film. It became a proof of concept to show people what I'm really trying to do next in my life. And that is, get into film and television and incorporate my music and other music to it. And so Red Clay is based on true events in my life. It deals with family, the dynamic between mother and son. It deals with addiction, community, and a few other things. So the short film is just a way to kind of get in the door. It's tangible. It's something I can show people that I'm hypothetical about anything. I'm serious about this. I'm taking the necessary steps to learn, collaborate, build relationships in this space. And we've been getting great feedback in the festivals. And right now it's not able to be shown for everybody because we're actually trying to get considered or at least get nominated for an Oscar. And that's how serious I'm taking this. And so all the festivals that have accepted us, obviously we appreciate it, and we still just doing the work out here. And it's therapeutic. It's me in a very, very vulnerable space, and it's just I'm on a emotional roller coaster right now.
And you have so much experience in this field. How does it feel collaborating this way? And what do you think about 2 Chainz' points that we see people sometimes, whether they're in public life or in our own lives, as one-dimensional, one part of their story when there may be layers?
Oh, of course. And that's what drew me to it. I mean, for my involvement, it just came from our conversations. It's about life and, parenthood and things of that nature, our childhoods. And we were lockstep in so many, in our ways of being, right? And our trains of thought. And when he shared the story with me, for me, it felt necessary for the audience to be able to see this. It does have so many layers, but there's such a beauty to it at the end of the day within that community, whether impoverished or not, within family, within, the other side of addiction and things of this nature. So again, for me, it was about being of service and helping him to, bring the vision to fruition.
Yeah. I don't know if it helps the Oscar campaign or not, but your following is global and it's intergenerational. And we see younger people coming up here on TikTok and these platforms now where they can share more easily than before. And I just want to show some of the 2 Chainz love on TikTok.
Wow. Catch up to my campaign.
A rapper, a baller, a philanthropist.
Drinking champagne on the airplane. Skeleton in my closet.
2 Chainz actually got one of my favorite bodies of work ever.
Do you notice people who sometimes are discovering music years later and vibing to it? Do you notice that?
I think that's where we are right now with the, I guess with the resurgence of whatever TikTok is. I think a lot of music, music is timeless, for the most part anyway, but TikTok gives people who are trying to create content or just trying to do something, period, a place to find, create, and shovel out the music again. So I'm just, honored and blessed to be making music that lasts, over a decade now, and to still be, somewhat relevant, you know what I'm saying? And still be, humble, have all my wit, my grit, my mentality is still stable, and to also be passionate about any and everything I'm doing. And if it's recording, putting out this soundtrack, the Red Clay soundtrack, it's something that I worked on because we can't show the movie to everyone right now, but the soundtrack is an actual mood board for the series that we're preparing. So each title on the soundtrack is an actual title of the series. So I'm a little ahead of everything, but that's where I like to be.
Yeah.
And, you know, people just have to catch up.
That takes us to it. Let's take a look at a bit of that soundtrack.
When you meet a plug, that's your real connection. In the A, daddy run around talking real neglection. In the A, better have a blick. You ain't got no stain, and your team don't have a championship, so you don't got no ring.
Do you feel like you've lived this evolution of hip hop where it was so attacked as seen as a black art form, seen as an art form from communities that aren't always given voice in mainstream culture, and now in a different way? Super Bowl, what we see in film, 50th anniversary. Do you feel like it's in a different place now as compared to when you were working with Pac or something?
Of course. I mean, but that's the natural course of anything, right? It's kind of like that with jazz, with bebop, at a point with rock and roll and all, you know. So hip hop was a genre that came along, and now it's to me, it's the dominant genre of pop culture. Everything is hip hop, is rapization, if you will. So now it's a part of the ecosystem, and as it should be. It's grown.
Yeah. All right. The project is Red Clay, Omar Epps, and 2 Chainz. Thank you again for coming through.
Man.
Great stuff. That's our time.